there are no questions, I would need a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to accept consent agenda. Who's ready?
I'll second.
Roll call, Jim?
I wasn't here for all of this, so, I can abstain. I was here for the one meeting, but not the other one. Obviously,
So just abstained from one.
yeah, it was, aye, for the, if we're, I don't know if we're gonna do it separate.
Bob?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Motion carried. 6, public hearing. I would need a motion to open the public hearing for the 2025 budget presentation.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing for the 2025 budget presentation.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
I'll just kind of start with the presentation and we'll go from there. So the village budget is balanced. We have a slight increase in our tax rate for next year of about 11 cents per 100,000 or per thousand of assessed value. Most of that is due to the increase in debt service for the fire truck that we approved this last year. And then about a 1.44% increase in the actual budget, which matches the net new construction for the prior year. Nothing in the general fund has changed since the last budget presentation we had on the general fund, so that stayed the same. The other funds, which we didn't go over, if you don't mind, I'll kind of start at there, unless someone had questions from the last meeting. But generally, our debt service fund is not much has changed. We are taking out new debt potentially tonight for our CIP, which basically our CIP loan we take out over a period of time. The last one we took out 2 years ago for a 2-year CIP, around $800,000. And then it ended in December. We paid that fully back. Now we take out a new one. So that would be a 1-year loan, which we can talk about in a little bit. Other than that, most of the loans are all still there. The TID loans the TIDs are funding all of their loans completely as of now. We probably will be taking out one in the future for the TID 6. It's not on here because until we get closer to that date next year, we'd basically end up doing an amended agenda, or amended budget, sorry, at that point, basically to account for that. But that TID will be funding fully that loan that would be taken out. So there's no impact on the tax roll at that point. Any questions on the debt? We also haven't taken anything out. We don't know if we're going to take anything out yet for the Mill Street project. In the past, sometimes we've taken out a loan to cover the construction in the next few years coming up to expand that parking area to accommodate trail and stormwater management behind the downtown. And I think there was a few other smaller projects. One is the financial analysis that we're planning on doing for the downtown reconstruction for that 3-year project, to make sure that the finances are all in a row and match what his staff has written out too. So it's just a double check there. The other portion too of the CIP is going to help pay for some of the remainder of the splash pad and playground update that is going to be finished next June. Any questions on the CIP? The library fund, Ally, do you want to kind of talk over that? I will say the village increased our portion by 1.44%, matching the net new construction that we had in here, so.
Yeah, everything is pretty much on the summary page, the 1.44% increase from the budget allocation from the village. The village also separated the staff maintenance line from our office supplies. Right now it was kind of combined, but it is now pulled out into the 100 fund where it should be for Public Works, and Public Works is making note of when they actually do library maintenance so that it's budgeted correctly, allocated correctly. Our longevity costs are rising, so that had to increase this year as well, which is a great problem to have. And every year our staff take a full staff training day to the Wisconsin Association of Public Libraries conference. So we close the library for a day, and those costs keep increasing each year, just membership and conference fees, so that increased as well. And those are the two, or those are just some of the lines that have increased the most. The library board approved the budget in, is that October? I believe that was October.
Any questions for Ally? TID 3, pretty much the summary page sums up TID 3. There's not much going on in that. Some of the expenses have been gone to obviously Main Street reconstruction for engineering this last year and this next year, potentially for a project that might be going in for stormwater management. Also in TID 3, some of the reoccurring expenses are trying to be from pond maintenance. We still are dealing with trying to find contractors to help maintain those ponds, but this TID is supposed to fund that maintenance portion. So hopefully this next year we'll have a new contract for that. Any questions on TID 3? So TID 4 tonight was just by the JRB at 4:30 was approved to become a sharing TID, which is going to do incremental sharing. So anything over the amount needed every year for that TID will then go into Any questions on TID 4?
Yeah, with the projects in TID 5 being paid for by TID 4, is that shorting TID 4?
Nope. So basically, we hired Ellers on, the financial firm, that's our financial advisor. They basically did a formula, looked at what projects we have listed for TID 4 going forward until the end of the TID, and basically anything we didn't need, they probably did a little bit of estimating conservatively on what is needed and what isn't. Anything above that amount that's needed would go to TID 5. So it's not shorting anything in TID 4. TID 4's projects is Main Street and then urbanization on Gibbons. And both of those projects are pretty much fully funded through that TID.
Thanks.
So TID 5, this next year, it was, the project plan was amended at the earlier meeting today. And so now the plan would be to kind of move forward with one of the first projects, which would be partially that parking lot. Cost of the parking lot and infrastructure going through there is estimated to be around $300,000 preliminary numbers. We haven't done engineering on it yet, so these are very high ballpark numbers by the engineering firms. They usually drop down once they do the engineering and figure out what's actually needed. So that's pretty much all that would be in TID 5. Any questions for TID 5 at this point? Move on. TID 6, which is the newest TID. So the only thing in this one would be potentially purchasing of the land that is not part of from Terrace Manor. So that Lot 1 is the only thing that's really listed in for that year. Other than that, it's just paying off any fees we have through Ellers and engineering. So
That's what the $100,000 is for?
the $100,000 would be a loan for the land.
Sorry, what,
So when we did the developers agreement with the
The Grandview property, right?
yeah, the Grandview property for that subdivision up there. There was that Lot 1 that was about 5 acres of land. We basically made an agreement with them that we would pay the cost of the land like they paid per acre cost for the area in Lot 1 minus the area needed for the stormwater ponds. So the estimate is going to be around, it'll probably be a little more than 100,000, but it'll be around that area.
It's that southeast corner, right? The first front right side?
It's north.
Or southwest, or northwest corner.
Northwest corner, yeah. So it should be around 4 acres or so of, maybe a little less of non-stormwater land.
what were you saying about the fees for,
So every year we have administrative fees, whether it's payroll. I'm the only one who gets part of my pay from this. So part of the TID's pay for my salary, and then they also pay Ellers. And then every year we have to do a permit with the state to have each of these open, which is about a few $100 maybe per TID, and then audit, stuff like that. So administrative costs.
thanks.
Yep. The last one, which is the Helping Hands of Hortonville, which is our transportation program. There's no significant change in the costs. Everything's basically paid for by
Page 22 of the general government.
Okay.
I didn't see a retirement amount for the municipal judge assistant.
She doesn't collect retirement. You have to work a certain amount of,
So she's that part-time that she hasn't reached it?
as of right now, she hasn't, yeah.
Okay. Cause under the current budget, it had a number of 1582.31.
Yeah, that was probably from the prior year, when we were, basically, it was stuck in that from the estimation, because in our old system, we just used Excel spreadsheet, and it
Mhm.
automatically calculated based off of the payroll amount. Because if someone is in that position who did used to work in municipal government, they would get WRS because they already qualified for it. So it just, that's why it's a zero for the actual amount expensed. So
Okay.
it just was updated now to match.
I just wanted to be sure we didn't miss it.
Yep.
Okay. Anyone else have any other questions?
Yes. Are there any services being scaled or cut back or added? Everything's staying the same?
Nothing being cut. Services added, probably not really services for residents. I think most of the things that are being added to are, basically a lot of it's going into our programming for, GIS is expanding that, continuing that. Other than that, it's just maintenance on roads and stuff. So nothing really,
Splash pad.
well, yeah, splash pad, I guess. is-
Splash
yeah.
pad, the water expense for it.
Yep.
Any other questions?
I guess I just have one more. Are there gonna be any anticipated changes in revenue?
In revenue, not really, other than, well, I mean, if you're asking like the debt or the taxes, or are you just, what's your, I guess?
Well, we increased the revenue for the rental of the park because of the
Right.
potential to get more from the park, but that's the only one, I mean, there's,
Right.
that's the biggest one I saw.
When's the projected rental,
June first is
for
the
the
project.
Grandview? So
Yeah.
what, the building's gonna be put up for, so is there an increase from the tax revenue from that in this next year, or is it gonna start the year after?
Tax revenue from the Alonzo Park, or?
No, from the
Grandview.
Grandview development.
Who cares, property taxes?
So that one you probably won't see, because that'll go towards the tip.
This one.
The West Wind Phase 2, when those start going up, you won't see that for another year. Because basically, this year's taxes are from January 1st of this year of what was the village looked like. So next year's taxes, when we go through this next December, it'll be as of January 1st in a few weeks here. So, which West Wind doesn't have a single building up there yet, so it'll be probably 2027
Before we see it.
before we see it.
2027 or 2026?
27.
2025.
I guess they have to be billed as of January 25th, right, which we're not gonna have 3 weeks, nothing's gonna be billed.
Right.
So it'll be 2026.
So anything built by January 25th, you'd see in 26. January 1st of 2025, you would see in 2026.
Anything built in
Gotcha.
2025 is gonna hit 2027.
I don't remember
Mhm.
what it was before that.
It was 75.
So, and then the lottery credit, which is from the state, that dropped $30. So, no matter what, you're going to have a little bit of increase there. The village's increase estimated about $16 to $20 kind of depending obviously on the assessed value. I think it was about $16 for $150,000 of assessed value. I think actually I'll verify that quick here. I think it's on here. Might not be. Okay. So yeah. So part of the issue with the increase in taxes is going to be based off of, you know, a mixture of the village. I know the school district increased a decent amount, and the same with FVTC and Allegheny County. So whether or not they decrease it or increase it themselves, part of it is the share that we get of theirs is based on the equalized value. So the village's equalized value went up a good amount. The issue is without the assessed value matching, which our assessed value is about 70% right now, there is that split where they're going off of equalized, and so it's going to increase. We won't realize those increases ourselves until basically the next year when we have our market value reevaluation of the property, and then at that point our numbers would jump back up, and we'd probably drop down then. So, any questions on the summary of taxes?
Okay, then we would need a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 7, pre-registered citizens to be heard, limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone? Okay. 8, committee reports. There are none. 9, unfinished business from previous meetings. There is none. 10, new business. A, discussion and possible action on resolution R-31-24 adopting the 2025 budget and approving the tax levy. Are there any questions? If not, I would need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve R-31-24.
I'll second that.
Roll call, Jim?
Aye.
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 Motion carried. B, discussion and possible action on electric submersible mixer for water tower.
So, we've been having problems with the mixer that we have in our water tower right now. It's about 8 years old, and we talked to a couple of different companies. It keeps blowing fuses, and they said it's about at the end of its life. So we have basically 2 options to replace it. The first sheet in your packet is basically just a copy of the historical annual fees that we paid to USG Water, which we're under contract with for our tower inspection and tower painting. The second 2 sheets kind of show what they've done over the years with their contract, with their inspections, washouts, different things like that. And you can see on the second page of that, between next year and 2027, we're going to be due to have the exterior repainted. So the idea behind that basically is that you pay each year for the inspections, and then when it comes time to do the painting, you don't have to come up with the $300,000 to $500,000. And inspections on the mixer that's in there as well. The cost for that would be, I think it's in here, about $37,000, $37,233, which would be broken up into a 3-year payment. After that, it's an additional $3,000 a year to do the inspections on it, and then if something breaks or needs to be replaced, that's just all covered by that $3,000 a year. So it's constantly being checked, it's constantly being looked at. And when it needs to be replaced, it just keeps getting replaced.
Will they do maintenance on it then also?
Yes.
Repair maintenance?
That's part of the fee.
How much is the mixer?
So otherwise, the second quote is just to replace what we have in there now, which is about $17,232. So it's quite a bit less, but there's no annual maintenance, no checks on it, and basically you just wait until you need to replace it again and hope that nothing happens to it in between.
And how long do these things last?
Well, the one right now is about 8 years old. It's just about so 8 to 10 years.
8 to 10 years.
So
You're not doing any maintenance or any inspections on the mixer yourself, right?
we don't. We get alarms when something's wrong, so then try to fix it or call someone in to fix it. But as far as annual maintenance or anything like that,
So
nothing.
nothing's been done for 8 years.
Right. So basically, if you went with the more expensive one, you get a consistent number that we could budget for every year, and peace of mind knowing that it's being looked at and maintenance on it, and we don't have to come up with this $17,000 when something fails. We just have a constant awareness of it, just like we do with our water tank. Otherwise, we can go with what we had previously at 17,000, and hope for the best, and have to replace it another 8 to 10 years. Personally, I would rather, just for peace of mind, go with the more expensive one, just to know that it's constantly being looked at, updated, and making sure that we don't have any problems with it. Just because I don't want to be the village that's on the 5 o'clock news saying they're bringing water trucks in because we have a problem with our water supply. But I understand that it is more expensive at the get-go to get started with this. So if the board does want to go with the 17,000 to go with how we've done it before, I'm okay with that too.
How long does the more expensive one last?
It's the same, it's just you're getting that constant budget number and the annual maintenance on it. So they're gonna look at it every year when they come do the other tower inspections. And then, as it needs to be replaced in the future, that $3,000 is covering that. So we'll never have to come up with this big lump sum again.
But like they would probably end up replacing it.
No, 8 to 10 years probably.
Yeah.
That'd be the assumption.
But in the meantime.
If something happens earlier than that, we're covered.
It's not something that's easily accessible to inspect for our staff either.
No, it's something we'd have to call somebody in to have.
Yeah.
How do
And
you,
visual inspection is not very helpful. with
No.
that to know.
how do you get notifications if there's a problem?
Through our SCADA system, I think. We've had like fuses that keep blowing out on it right now.
That's,
Okay, and then how do you deal with when a fuse blows out? How do you deal with that?
Call someone to have them come
You
fix
call
it.
it, and how expensive is that?
Top of my head, I don't know.
Well,
Couple, yeah, I don't know.
So, cause I like the idea of doing maintenance and stuff, but the cost for the more expensive version, assuming that it lasts 8 years, which is their low end, for what you just said, that's $61,000. You could replace it 3.5 times over the course of 8 years for that cost, at the expense of the other one. So $17,000 to replace it without the maintenance, but you'd have the cost of whatever it costs for us to have somebody come in and do it. But if you do the more expensive one with the maintenance, over the course of 8 years, it's $61,000.
If we went with the lower priced one, would we likely be still getting some kind of maintenance yearly? I mean, that we haven't been doing? Like, to Jim's point, is it a tit for tat? Like, would we be still going?
I mean,
with
we
some sort of
could look
maintenance?
into hiring someone to come in and do it, and it would probably be a couple $1,000s every year to do the maintenance on it.
Is there a substantial difference between the
And that,
$17,000 one and what these guys are gonna put in for $37,000?
no.
They're basically the same.
But you also have to realize that 61,000 that you just calculated, that continues to go down as you do 3,000 every year.
Yeah,
Because-
but still, even if you did that, though, even if they lasted the shortest period, which is you're saying 8 years, you're still paying $24,000 every time, every 8 years for it. If you're paying 3,000, assuming that it didn't go up, which it will, that
Right.
3,000 won't stay forever. So, yeah, so even if it stayed exactly the same, you'd still be paying $24,000.
24 to
replace
17.
it. Yeah, so.
And that's having the peace of mind that it's being inspected every year.
Yes,
too.
so the point to look at is the expense for when you have somebody come look at it. Are you exceeding $7,000
That I
in that
know.
expense? That's why I asked how much you're
Yeah.
paying for,
I
and
think it'd be,
how frequent is it?
I think it would be pretty close.
How frequently do you have to have somebody come service it?
Well, this would be annually.
So once a year?
Yeah.
Well, you said you have fuses and stuff like that, so is that,
Well, right now, they keep going up more often.
well,
but that's
because aging, right?
Yeah.
That's why we want to replace it in the first place,
Yeah.
but when it was newer, or
Well,
what's the
If you just
expectation
tried to
when
do
it's
apples
newer?
to apples with this one, it'd be once a year. So with if we got the one from, I think it's KLM, yeah. So we'd try to get a contract for that for once a year.
And what's the time frame if it does need to be, if we don't have a service contract, what's the time frame to get somebody in to service it if it has a problem?
Depends on how busy they are, I guess,
Or what's then the historical time frame for
within a couple
when
of
you
days.
blow a fuse and,
Yeah,
okay.
pretty quickly.
And what happens to our water supply when that happens? Do we still, we just still continue to use it?
It's
You
just
still
not
have
getting
circulation?
mixed. So over time, if
couple
it's
of
not
days,
being
yeah.
mixed, yeah, then you'll start to run into problems.
Okay. I mean, to me, it seems like I like the idea of maintenance, but it seems like a significant expense if you could pay for it, multiple times over to have it replaced, to pay the additional amount for the replacement and pay for the $3,000 of maintenance. So it would be my suggestion that we look at getting the less expensive one and then seeing if there's some way we can
Maintenance
do
program.
an annual maintenance program instead of paying all of this upfront.
Okay.
That would be my suggestion, but it's just, I only have one.
Do we have time to go back and ask if they have like an annual maintenance program?
Yeah.
With that, I don't understand the $3,000 thing, like, you said, you make the initial purchase,
It would be spread out over 3 years at $12,000 a year. That's to replace the mixer. And then they just do annual maintenance, and that fee covers the next time it needs to be replaced,
the next whole part.
10 years from now. So we
And
just
then after
constantly
that-
pay
after
that
that too?
3,000.
And then the next part, and the next part, and the next part,
Yep.
like decades from now?
That's the same thing, like, you see, we pay like 20,000 a year right now, but when our tower needs to be painted, that's covered underneath as that 20,000 a year that's, we've been paying for the last, since 2004.
Can we look at this and just find out what an extended,
Yeah. I can bring it back next
I
meeting.
think that would be the way I would feel comfortable with it too.
Everybody okay with that? Okay. Then we will move on. C, discussion and possible action on citizens' request for temporary village parking lot exemption.
I'm just trying to find the letter. This is our old village hall. The owner of that property, when they bought that property, they were given in the paperwork to purchase it, they were allowed 3 stalls during working hours from, I think it's 7 to like 5. He bought the parcel across the street, which is a duplex, on Mill Street, and he got 2 renters. One of the renters basically has the garage, and he doesn't have room for the other renter for their vehicles. So he's requesting that we give him a temporary, allow him to temporarily use his spots for the nighttime parking to prevent his residents from having tickets and stuff in the meantime. His plan is to fix and expand the driveway and remove one of the trees in order to do so, next year. So he doesn't think he's gonna obviously get them in during the winter to do all that stuff, so. That's why he's requesting temporary access.
And I don't have a problem with it. I guess my question is are those 3 stalls, are they labeled somehow?
Yes.
They are.
There's signs in front of it that says a law.
So if anyone that's a citizen goes in that parking lot and says, well, wait a minute, how can they park there? Well, the sign says that it's reserved for them. I mean, I don't have a problem with it. It's just I would want to make sure that people understand why somebody's parked there.
How would the plowing be done there for that?
It's actually in a decent location because it's right around the corner by the entrance of our parking lot there. We wouldn't plow his stuff. Basically, we'd go around it and he would have
He
to.
would be responsible for that?
Yeah, and I think I don't know if he mentioned it in here, but I know he mentioned it on the phone with me. So,
We do use the back of it for snow storage, but where he's located, shouldn't interfere with that.
Oh, it's just temporary.
But
Right.
I disagree. I think we had another renter come before us and asked to use the city's public parking, and we told them no, because they didn't have adequate parking for their tenants. And we told them no, that wasn't going to be allowed.
But these
that
slots,
was permanent.
but
Well,
that's permanent.
temporary.
Right, no, I know, I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm just,
But
Yeah,
these
I-
3 stalls are specifically, like, if you've got an, I don't wanna call it an easement, it's not, that's not the right
Yeah.
term. But if you're giving someone those 3 stalls and you're saying between 7 and 5, at the time, if no one would have put a time in that contract, that it would be 24/7.
right.
I understand the point. I just, I think it's inconsistent of us to do that one. I think we told one, and I think we told one renter, one thing, and I think that this would be, and I completely understand the difference and the idea to create an exemption for them. And I sympathize with them, but I think that we should be consistent, and otherwise we're gonna open ourselves up for why does this person get this and this person doesn't, and I'm not sure, in my mind, I'm not sure that that's a good enough basis to, a substantial enough basis to stand on to say this is why we're gonna let this person park in public parking.
Aren't they his parking spots?
No, I mean,
During certain times of the day.
during certain times it is.
That's the tricky thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certain times of the day. But they're designated as his spots, and if he's going to, I hear you.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
also feel like that was also in good faith that he was getting those 3 spots. He could also have a night shift working in that office,
I mean,
and it's not a renter, you know what I mean? It could be, to me, it's not circumstantial for me. It's just it's 3 spots.
I mean, we have no parking posted in all these lots for hours, right?
I think 3 to 6 or 5.
3 to 6.
I think since he's on Mill Street and his renter's on Mill Street, I think I would do him a solid and make it work for him because he's gonna be paying 2 special assessments. And I think you gotta give a little sometimes. And it's temporary, it's not even, there's a finite end to it, and you can hold him accountable to that, because he said there would be.
I understand that argument, I just don't agree with it. I think it's inconsistent to allow one renter to do it and not allow another. And once we start opening, we allow parking in the public lots. I mean, if we decide that we want to allow parking in the public lots overnight, then it should be for everybody.
You could ask him to get different signs.
How much are we enforcing the nighttime parking? I mean, obviously, if there's no snow,
Someone's getting it, 'cause
Yeah.
someone just got a ticket the other
Okay.
day that I know of
Yeah.
okay.
for parking on the streets.
Okay.
There are a lot of residents who have to park in their yard, and
Mhm.
I mean, I know I do. I have too many vehicles. I have to,
We had a
I have one
renter that
parked in
used
my
to
front
park
yard
in the
right now.
backyard. Yeah.
I think we could be opening a can of worms, cause I know a couple of people on Main Street that don't have room for their vehicles, and a couple times they parked them in Miller Park, so then we'd have to say, okay, you can park it in Miller Park then. I know there's an RV on Main Street that they're having difficulty, it looks like it's right on their lawn right now. They may hear of this and say, well, then can I park my RV there over the winter? I don't know, are we opening up a can of worms by allowing one person to do this and we would deny others?
Well, he has grounds to do it. I think if someone said, hey, can I park my RV there, you'd say no.
well, that's what, you can't just tell one person yes and one person no, because we
There's
don't
grounds,
like your
there's
vehicle.
grounds to say yes in this scenario.
Well,
He's made a
okay,
very formal request.
yeah, I mean,
It's not,
they,
hey, I have an RV and I can't fit it at my house, can I just put it in the public lot? It's not what this is saying.
I have more vehicles than I can park in my driveway. I could make a legitimate request and say, I just don't, my kids get older and now I got more cars and I don't have room. I mean, just because I don't, I still have to find another alternative. I think, like I said, I think it's fine if we, as a board, decide that we wanna allow parking, but if we are gonna allow parking, then we should allow parking for everybody.
I
We
don't
shouldn't
think it
just
has to be
throw something.
all or nothing, that's why things are circumstantial. And I know you like to restrict parking, so
No, I just said we
So,
we could allow.
I
for
guess there's an argument for either or. You could, granted, allowing it, you might end up having others calling in and requesting, which most likely I can see potentially happening. You could say that the only reason this situation was granted was it was temporary. Granted, that doesn't stop other people from necessarily saying the same thing, that they want it temporarily as well, just for this year. So I guess either argument could really be kind of seen here. I guess the thing that I think is a little different is I think there's room for two parking. It's, yes, you have a single driveway, but it's a double car garage. So, I mean, you don't necessarily all have to park right.
I was just gonna ask you which lot
So,
is it?
yeah, I'll pull it up. I think that might help the situation
Trying to-
rather than,
I was trying to pull up Google Maps to try and figure out.
It's right next to, Mike Murphy.
yeah.
yeah.
building.
The white
It's the white one on the
Yeah, the
White
driveway's
house right
adjacent to
next
the
to it
parking lot.
on, if you go up the street, it's the left-hand side.
On Mill Street.
First house after Murphy's, old Murphy's building.
So where
Maybe
everyone
it
lands,
has.
but,
And it's, what, two apartment?
So it's yeah,
Upper and lower.
I don't-
okay.
So it's
And
the-
I don't think,
it's
have
66
we ever
right there,
had
right?
difficulty with this,
Yeah, there's a,
So,
house before,
I
with parking?
don't know. Well, the prior people that owned it, I don't know if they were necessarily renting it. I don't know.
Okay.
Because it somehow is a duplex. It's not zoned for duplex, but it is. Part of our ordinance also basically states that you're supposed to provide adequate off-street parking for your tenants, if you have.
And it's a long drive.
I didn't realize it was R2.
It's not, but it's.
Then how can it
Eyebrows
be two
just went like
apartments?
this.
My eyebrows went up
Yeah,
because that's a
yeah.
very, so here you have somebody openly admitting they have a duplex in an R1 lot.
It's been like that for. How necessarily and what time period that happened in. I think realistically, you can fit it. You can
It's a
easily.
two-car
maneuver
garage,
between-
there's two stalls plus
Right.
two
Right,
parking
and
lot.
even
spots.
if you gave them two garage, you have, you
I
guys
was
park
gonna
on this
ask which
side
lot it
and,
was.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to go back and ask them, maybe to ask to have that rezoned. Number one.
yeah.
Yeah.
And number two,
Mhm.
based on, now that I know which lot it is, he does have room, but again, if he wants to amend whatever contract was done when he purchased that building with the village? Is it a contract? What was this?
It was on part of the sale of the lot. So part of the it was written in the sale paperwork, on the, I think it was WB13 paperwork, or I might have the number wrong, but basically it was written in there as part of the deal. They wouldn't get an easement, but they would get 3 stalls during these times.
And it's fair he could ask for an amendment and have that,
I would suggest denying it.
correct.
Yeah.
He could ask for an amendment. but
Right.
I'd also ask for him to ask for a rezone for R2. I think that also needs to be a clear message too, in that there's a lot of houses that are split into 2
Mm-hmm.
that are zoned R1,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
But I think what it sounds like, what you're telling me, is that he's got the one resident that's there that apparently is taking up more than their fair share of parking, and another resident who doesn't have parking. That sounds like a
It's
personal problem.
I guess from what I heard was, I think, didn't you talk to
I
him?
did, I talked to him. So the person that lives in the lower gets the garage. There's 3-car garage. So it's 2-car and then there's one off to the side. So that person that lives downstairs gets the garages, and the person that lives upstairs has no garages and doesn't have access to the driveway, but has access to the yard. So that person has no place to park.
How do they have no access to the driveway? That makes no sense to me.
Because you have to provide your renters with,
So that's what he's
Parking.
doing is, there's a tree, you can clearly see that there's a tree to the right or to the north of the
Yeah.
driveway.
Yeah.
So he's gonna cut that tree down in the winter, and then in the summer or in the spring, he's gonna pave the driveway to make it so that
Wider.
it's a wider driveway. So that's why he's asking for parking, so that he can make this right, and that he can have the driveway so that's wide enough.
So-
It's narrow on the very end of the driveway by the sidewalk, that you can only get 1 car to drive in.
So question, because I'm looking at so you said there's 3 garage stalls, right? So
Mhm.
there's the 2 inside the garage and then 1 to the
Right.
north of the garage, is that what you're?
Yeah, so when you go in the driveway, it goes up this way, there's a car, a stall, and then there's one this way.
So is there a reason the other tenant can park in the grass past the tree?
Or maybe they could ask their neighbor, the ultra source. I mean,
That's what I was thinking too, is
they've got, I mean, they had asked if they could park things temporarily overnight. But that's their private,
It's a
that's
private
private
lot.
property, correct. But I mean, I'm not trying to give away their parking stalls, but, there is a potential there.
It's
Mhm.
probably
But
hard
the
for
person
rent,
because he owns
but the person that's renting has 4 children.
Upstairs or downstairs?
She's renting the upstairs. So she's got 3 children that drive. She's moving, she wants to move to this area here, so she's got 3 vehicles. So she can't fit 3 vehicles in that driveway. So that's why she's requesting to park behind the business. And that's how this is all coming about. She wants to keep her children, the kids are all at the high school, so she's looking to keep her children at the high school.
I feel for the situation, but I think that it's a private, I think that the owner of the property is violating the ordinance or the zoning, and then on top of that, they're not providing parking to their tenants, so they're in violation there. And it's
Well,
also
let's be-
private.
Wait, let's be fair, they are providing parking,
But only for
providing 1 stall, and that's what they're required to do, right? Provide technically 1 stall to each tenant. Is that correct? So if you have 2 apartments, they have to provide 2 stalls.
Is it?
I mean, I'm asking.
Okay.
Because I don't want to say they're not providing parking, they are, they're just not for 4 vehicles.
I can't remember, for some reason I didn't think it was 2, I think it's 3 actually for the 2,
3 per,
for the 2, let me just pull it up, because I really don't want to say something.
And that'd be an interesting thing, because when you rent an apartment, they usually give you one stall, and then if you want a garage, you can pay more for that, and I mean, speaking of the previous person that asked for the parking on the street, that was their issue, right? They had a garage, plus they had a stall.
I think there's two better solutions for this. One is that they cut the tree down sooner and then just park in the yard. You know, because you can park there without paving it. Or two, talk to, the
That place
place on the
before us,
corner,
yeah.
and see if they can, see if they can resolve an equitable, compromise.
I don't know that they're in violation of the providing stalls for their tenants, they just.
But I mean, if they're looking to
may have
provide
allocated
3
too many.
more stalls, they need, it's a private property, they need to provide them at their own private expense.
One per family and one per guests.
So
for
two,
Boarders, so I think more
so there's 4 already there, at least,
for them, yeah.
for two households, right? Cause there's 2-car garage plus the stall next to it, plus there's definitely room on the grass.
I think they could probably make it work. It might look weird for a while, but I don't know.
That lot's pretty small though.
It is.
It looks
I
big.
drove over there.
Yeah, it looks big on there, but it's pretty small.
Yeah, I agree, it is.
I just think it's an unfortunate circumstance, you've got two tenants that each have, one has 3 and one has 4, that's a lot of vehicles for a standard apartment complex. This is a house, right? It's a house that's been converted to a 2-story or 2-family home. It's not meant for that, it was never intended for that. So as long as we have 4 spots, I think, to Jim's point, there's options.
He is a business owner, and I think when you work with business owners, it does have a positive ripple effect.
But we also can't show favoritisms. So then you're saying
I
a
don't
regular
think it's
resident, you would just
favoritism.
deny it because they're a resident and not a
It's
business
a
owner?
circumstance where it's his property, both of the properties are his. He's trying to use what he's got, he's not trying to go over to Ultra Motor Source and work a deal out with him if he can take care of it himself.
So what are you saying? So let's say he sells this place and he's not a business owner that owns it anymore and they wanna park somewhere. What would they do?
Well,
If I
I'm
bought
looking
it.
at this thing that's in front of me, that's for temporary permission for his tenants and his plan to remove the tree, and I would just, maybe, hey, we need this to have more detail, like with dates and end times, and
My only saying to you is that you had mentioned that this is a formal request, and the last person that came in and did it actually came in person and gave essentially a formal request. It was verbal rather than written, and we denied that one.
they're not the same. You don't have to do just no on every parking.
You have to be careful though, because you can't,
If somebody asks me about it, I say was the parameters of the topic.
I agree with you, but you have to look at
We were all in
the
here when.
future of the future decisions or the future.
It's a temporary.
I'm not arguing with you, and I agree it's a temporary and it's an unfortunate circumstance, but I think that you have to be careful as part of your consideration when you're looking at these at case-by-case basis, is to see the future effects of said decision. You can't say, well, this is unique, blah, 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 which is great, it's unique, but you always have to consider what is the future things that are gonna happen from that decision.
It's just interesting, because when the discussion started, we were saying, oh yeah, you would park 1, 2, 3, it won't be in the way of the snowplow, and then when Jim has strong feelings about it, then somehow the whole tide is, we cannot do this.
No, he brought up a perspective that said, we said no to something previously, we can't ignore that, we need to remember that we're thinking about that as well. You have to bring that back into thought.
That's his opinion.
And like Julie said, we can always do an amendment to his contract, or figure something else out, or he cuts the tree down, and they park on the lawn. I mean, there are other options.
And this happens every year within the village.
There's a
I've
lot
got
of
a
cars.
neighbor next
There's a
door
lot
that's
of
got the
cars in
same
people's
problem.
yards right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
It
and
is a
it's-
I think it's
hardship.
not just as simple as cutting a tree down though, I'm looking at like the street view. So like there's the driveway and then where the tree is, there's quite an
Hill?
incline.
Yeah, there's a
Mhm.
big hill.
There's an incline there and I think there's just landscape work that has to be done,
Mhm.
which I think that's what he was talking about with the, I think that's what he was trying to talk about with the,
It's a big
cutting
tree.
it down.
Both sides of that street is.
it's a really big tree. It's a big pine tree
Mhm.
and I think there's a big slope, so I think there's landscape work and that's why you mentioned the frozen ground.
So how do we explain to people that there's cars parked there, and then the next car goes and parks there overnight and gets a ticket, and these three don't? I mean, how do we explain that to that person that got the ticket?
I think
Get
that
some
part's easy.
signs
I
that
think
say
explaining to the
parking.
next person that comes in to request and says, you let this person do it, how come I only need it for the winter too when I have too many vehicles. Then that's the next person that comes in. I'm sympathetic to this. I really am sympathetic and I understand it, but
I don't believe you. You're not sympathetic to people's parking.
Well, thank you for telling me what that you think I'm lying, but.
I didn't say
but
that. I've just
you just did.
observed-
I don't believe
I've
you means,
observed-
I'm saying words, you don't believe me means you think I'm lying, but I'm not.
I've observed and experienced you being really stringent with parking in the village.
Well,
You really like to police who's parking.
Well, I don't know.
Wish we
In
didn't
my
have
own
winter parking.
home, Grace, I have to rigmarole my cars around because I have a very short driveway. And one car can only park in my garage. So now we have 3 other vehicles that I have to rigmarole around every day to make sure that this one can get out first and this one can get out second. It's what I have to do myself. We're not trying to be hard on anyone or be prejudiced or anything, but I think we've all seen people struggle with teenagers or this or that when you have extra cars in the driveway. And in a couple of years, I'm gonna have another extra car. So now I'm talking 4 cars sitting out and 1 in the garage. So should I ask for special privileges? Because we gave special privileges to this person.
It is temporary.
You know.
There's a
Maybe
plan
he
right
hasn't
there.
explored all his options, though. This might have been his first thought, was I have these 3 parking places that have been granted to me. It is a temporary situation, but maybe he needs to look at other options other than just using his own parking places for his business.
It's roping more people into it. It's just not.
But
yes,
sometimes
yeah,
that's,
I
you know,
get what you're
sometimes
saying.
that's what you have to do. If that's
Mhm.
your, he chose to be the landlord, he chose to rent the space out, he has to make parking available for his tenants.
He's
This
definitely
could-
trying with
Well,
the help
this-
of the board.
But if we tell him no, he has to look for another option.
I know him.
Which isn't-
I know him personally, so I'm just like I'm kind
Yeah.
of dumbfounded by the. Like, do you guys know who he is?
Yeah, I know who he is. I know who he is. I talked to him.
Seems like a very clear, concise. This is what you can expect, and yeah, there could be more options, of course. I just think this is not worth such a long debate. Like helping a resident and business owner in this village.
Well, his other option is to call the police department every night and request to park on the street. Which they could do. They definitely could call the police department every night and say, these are my license plate numbers, this is what I'm doing, I'm parking on the street. Then we'd have something to cover our butts about, okay, now we've allowed this. What's the difference if we have to move those cars and plow, or if we have to move them out of the parking lot and plow? You know? I don't know. What does everyone want to do?
So if this was, and I go back to the zoning, and I know that's not part of the agenda, but this is pertinent. If this was zoned R2, we would have, he would, then the, being that there's 2 tenants, they would have to ensure that there's 4 stalls. And he's an attorney, so,
I think he kind of has to provide those stalls regardless of what it's zoned.
correct,
He's got a duplex, which
Correct.
our duplex ordinance basically states you should have 2.
but it's zoned R1 right now, so.
Right, so then he would have to deny one of the other families then. That would be the other option.
That's how I look at, like, go back to the drawing board of,
Which,
literally zoned it's R1, so there should be 2 stalls there. If you want it zoned R2, then you're gonna need to, if you want 4
Does-
stalls, yeah, I mean,
Does R1 require a number of stalls?
I don't even know. If this was zoned R2 and it was just an oversight, or this was, boy, this was done so many years ago and they didn't provide enough parking. But the house is zoned incorrectly, the property is zoned incorrectly. And now we're running into a problem with it.
The house numbers are also not correct, because it's just 119 North Mill for both residents. It should be 119 and a half then, also.
I think I'd have to see what it is actually labeled as, but yeah.
I mean, there's-
It is split technically.
Just for
For the
emergency
water.
I just I don't know if it's a
purposes.
1/2 or if it's,
AB.
AB, or if it's,
One.
yeah, I'd have to verify that with the parcel information.
We're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole here. We're trying to accommodate R2 in an R1 lot.
I think it depends. It's still, there's still adequate parking, I would think, for a duplex there if you needed it. The issue is the type of person that you have has multiple vehicles. It was a very similar situation, I guess, with the guy that was renting in the apartment complex
Yeah.
Mhm.
that was asking for temporary parking, and at least there was no snow, and we denied him. He just had 3 vehicles, because he had a work truck and all this other
Yeah,
stuff.
yes,
And
yeah.
she's got 3 kids, and it's just,
It's just the circumstances. yeah.
right, so I think I think there is some potential other options if he didn't look around. I mean, I think that we might be able to talk to some of the other business owners nearby for at least temporary overnight parking in their parking lots. I don't,
So do we just say, go back to him and ask him if he can find some other options?
Can't get a reason.
Well, he's got, he could go to no limits too.
right.
They've got
Right,
many parking stalls.
and the, who's in the place with the motorcycles? I can't think.
Miles.
Yeah, I mean, he's got extra parking.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
no,
think
you know,
there
it's
might
not
be-
asking them.
That's easy for you guys to say. What we can talk about is what the village parking lot has. That's,
Right, but the village parking lot also is a public parking lot, which the rule for the general public is not to be in there during 3 to 6, so.
And there is a
making-
sign.
And making an exemption for one person is always a problematic thing. The only reason that it was being even brought here was because of the fact that it could have been temporary, and that's kind of the only reason it was brought. And if he didn't have the old village hall that had those 3 temporary parking stalls, which he owns only between 7 and 5, that also added into it. It's,
I mean, you could just let them take care of the issue. I
Yeah.
mean, next winter theoretically would not be a problem if he can get his tree down and make his driveway.
but I guess to the rest of the board's points, that doesn't stop anyone else going forward at requesting similar things, where there's temporary issues with parking.
Somebody that lives on Bear Street that says, I need a parking stall for this extra vehicle, you know.
That I didn't have in the past, and I'm gonna do something.
That's a nightmare as far as I'm
Right.
concerned for the police department.
Right.
Just, I mean, what do you have, a spreadsheet, you
Yeah.
know?
Right.
I mean, it's one thing to get a phone call and approve parking for a night and know about that. I mean, how is that handled? You guys get the call, and then the night shift is aware of it
Correct.
and knows not to ticket it.
Yeah.
But we.
How do you track
wanna
that
get
when
into
there's
the
100 of
routine
them?
Somebody calling every night to make requests or, yeah. I mean,
But if it was like a pending snowstorm coming,
Right.
then it would be, I'm sorry, that's not
Correct.
gonna work today, yeah. I agree with you, Grace.
I'd just like to remind you that that person is gonna get like probably $20,000 special assessment coming up. I think for,
They also knew about that when they purchased the lot. That's all disclosed. I'm just
saying,
letting you know. that-
there's give and take.
I agree, I understand.
Those are some steep special assessments, and I get that they all know they're coming.
Grace, I owned a rental on Mill Street, and I had my own house on Mill Street. So when they did Mill Street, I got double assessed. No one cared. I'm serious. I mean, they said, you own that house, you owe this assessment. That's just life. So he owns this house, he knows he's got his assessment. He has a business, he knows he has an
How much was
assessment.
your assessment?
My assessment at that time was $12,000 between the two. And I'm just a simple little resident here, and I had to pay it. I don't get any breaks because I own two houses on the same street. I got no breaks. Someone that lives on a corner lot gets no breaks if they do one street and then do the other.
I got that.
And that's happening over here. So I mean, you can't use that and say, well, he's paying this much in assessments, because we all understand. If we owe an assessment, we owe it. We have two properties, we owe two assessments. No one's trying to be mean here. We're trying to be logical and fair to every person in this village.
It seems logical and rational to have a temporary parking situation with them.
What do we want to do? We have to make a decision. We either deny it and ask him to find something else, or we have to say, go ahead.
Do you need some kind of a motion?
We need a motion, one way or the other, so.
I will make a motion to deny the citizen's request for the temporary village parking lot exemption and suggest that we look at other options.
I'll second.
Roll call, Jim?
Aye.
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 Okay, 6 ayes, 1 nay. Motion is passed. D, discussion and possible action on temporarily changing the village's name to Whoville for the dates of 12/9/24 through 12/16 of 24.
The idea of this was to kind of help help market our, hometown holiday organization that, some of the staff, and some of the hometown holiday group have been doing a lot of prep work for. So the idea was to temporarily change the name of the village until, obviously, the date after the 12/14 when we're having our event.
We've done this in the past, haven't we?
We did it in the past temporarily for the Susical, the musical that the high school put on. They asked, I think back then David was here to do that, and they did that then for, I think, a month or so. Or maybe it wasn't that long,
I
it
think
was
it
a
was
few
like a week.
weeks.
Maybe the week of the musical.
So,
This is like what New London does for, New Dublin. So does this then just cover up our sign, or like the Hortonville signs coming in, or like is there, like how do they do it?
I would have to see what I don't know what they have from the last time. We don't have a new sign necessarily. I'm guessing it's probably gonna be the old sign that we're gonna stick on it.
Yeah,
But we're not,
we'd have to look into it, and maybe it's not even something that we can even get done this year, but something maybe to look into at the future. Brian was saying that maybe we have to look at getting kind of like some types of permission from the state and everything too, so.
Yeah, I just talked to Justin Folth, who was around for the musical, and he mentioned it was just like a corrugated plastic, like, what, that they ordered. They didn't have any, they only had one that was left, so he didn't know what happened to the other ones. But he said they just ordered them, but he thought that there was, that David Troy had to get some permission from the state to change the sign.
I think probably because
that period.
it was a state road at the time, so I'm
Okay.
guessing that was what they wanted to get okay.
Do we need to go to the county
Now
then?
we're talking
Yeah,
about-
so I don't know if there's like an application process, that's what I was just mentioning to Chris before the meeting, I don't know if there's an application process that you need to follow to change signs for those periods, I'm not sure.
I can reach out to the county otherwise. It might not, like you said, it might not be something we can get done this year, because I don't think we have a piece that would cover up that section. But
You call it one, and they probably need to change their name every year.
For sure.
Right. There's a new Dublin every year.
Mhm.
But they're on a state highway though.
But if you do need the permit, we need to find out.
Yeah, yeah, and that would be just contacting the Dean Steinberger or like
Yeah.
Mormons, local Mormons.
So basically, we should, look into it next year, cause there really isn't any time anymore this year, I wouldn't think.
it would be really last minute if we could pull it off at this point. We, at the time, so the reason it's on the agenda is we were still looking for the pieces on Monday when the agenda was put together. So, the hope was we'd be able to find it, and then, you know, we'd have the piece to kind of put over the sign. We couldn't find it, and we found the one, so, yeah, it's kind of why it's,
And you'd want adequate timeframe communication to the general public too.
yeah.
And I think that I would, if this is something we're gonna look at in the future, I would work with the county and say, okay, this is planned to be an annual thing, similar to the New Dublin in New London. Okay, so we're not gonna do it this year, but we're gonna, once we get the approval, then we'll order whatever it is we need to do, and we'll be prepared for next year.
Sounds good.
Maybe we could just do one, say change it for the 1 week a year, not have to,
True.
not have to do it every year.
We might just do a proclamation in the future then, like we do for trick or treat and Arbor Day.
Okay. We will move on to E, discussion and possible action on road resolution R-32-2024-25 CIP loan.
So this is the loan for the CIP, through Wolf River Community Bank. Interest rate is at 5.5%, to be paid over this next year. $355 is what we need, for the principal amount.
And you just need a motion.
We need a motion to approve the resolution. The plan is for Jeannie and Jane, I think, to sign it tomorrow morning, if you're available.
I figured so.
And then I'll make a motion to approve R-32-24, the resolution approving 2025 CIP loan.
A second.
Roll call, Jim?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. 11, reports of village officials. A, clerk treasurer, Jane.
My report was in the packet.
Does anyone have questions for Jane? Okay, we'll move to B, director of public works.
My report
Aaron?
was in the packet.
Any questions for Aaron? Okay, we'll move to C, police chief, Chris.
My report was not in the packet, but I handed one out to everybody prior to. So I wasn't able to attend, but we had the police lights of Christmas handoff, and that was on Tuesday. Chief Knapp stopped by today. She had to head over to All World to pick up some things, but she dropped off the items that were given to Hortonville. So we received this. It's kind of a plaque. It says, "Be the heart behind the badge." So we'll hang this in the police department someplace. These are apparently these are two old videos, something with police. She always gives us some type of little thing, whether it's some type of book or something like that. And then we collected, over $200,000, doing these different types of events. So this year we did the Cops and Culvers, where I stood in the, drive-through with a sign that said, I have warm coat, and I have socks. I'm trying to raise money for people that don't. I believe that we were in second place, raising funds, at the West Hill Boulevard location, in the state of Wisconsin. So we did really well there. Anyway, so we received $2,500 in gift cards to hand out to citizens in need. So they're from 500 from Quick Trip. Actually, there's 1,000 for Quick Trip. 500 for looks like 500 for the Walmart. There's some for Culver's. There's some for Festival Foods, and then these are kind of cool. We'll give these out to the school resource officers. Each year we like to find a family. So they're $250 on each one of them. And so we'll find a Hortonville family in each one of the elementaries or the middle schools, and then one in the high schools. And hopefully we can put a smile on their faces. So yeah, they're pretty cool that we can do this for the families. Just a couple other things that I was doing here are listed on there. But this is a pretty cool event. Glad that I can be a part of it.
Awesome. Anyone have questions for Chris? Okay, we move to D, Library Director, Ally.
I am wrapping up the end of the year, and I'll bring a report in January.
Anyone have questions for Ally? Okay, E is attorney and she's out. F, Nathan.
My report's in the packet, but don't have anything else at this time.
Any questions for Nathan? Thank you, and Jane and staff for working on the budget. We appreciate it.
Nathan or Aaron, at some point, when are they planning on stopping work at the splash pad stuff, or have they already?
They're not going to.
They're just gonna keep working through winter?
Yeah, for the
Playground stuff, whenever the weather's April, they're gonna keep chipping away at it.
Okay. And, is the Grandview project, are they gonna continue to work on it through winter, or are they gonna pause it?
I don't know. Most likely they'll work through winter. That's what they did for West Wind. They did all the infrastructure during the winter time, but not the, I guess, the piping, underground piping and stuff. So I'm guessing they'll continue.
Any other questions? G, building permit report. It is in the packet. H, any other miscellaneous topics for future discussions? Okay, we'll go to 12, communications and miscellaneous business. A, Blackwater Lake District news. Bob?
The lake is frozen over.
And there's people on it.
Yes.
Yeah, crazy.
Yes, that was crazy.
Holy.
Yes.
A lot of
Scary.
them in one spot.
Give the police department and the fire department a run for having to go rescue them. B, Hortonville, Hortonia Fire District news. Jim?
They did not have a meeting, but they had their training last night, and they had announcements that I sort of caught some of them. They have like three or four of the volunteer firemen that are retiring, and they have between 20 and 29 years each for the three of them that are through. I can't remember if
Yeah, 2 of them had 29 years, I believe, and 2 of them had 21. So, very nice. That's dedication. C, Gold Cross Ambulance Run Report and News, there is none. And D, Hortonville Civic Association, Jane?
I have nothing new.
Okay, 13, comments and suggestions from citizens present. Is there any?
Look at each other.
No. Okay, 14, I would need a motion to appoint a minute taker for closed session. I'll make a motion to appoint Shauna.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. 15, I would need a motion to go into closed session.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session under state statute 19.851C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility.
I'll second.
Roll call, Jim?
Aye.
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 Motion carried. Okay, we would need 5 minutes to
52 and a half.
18, oh, wait. Did we do roll call? Do we have a first and a second and
Yeah,
roll
we
call?
No, we didn't do a roll call, we did first and
I
second.
need roll call to.
Aye.
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 Okay, 18. Any action on matters discussed in closed session? There's none. 19, I would need a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are now adjourned at 8:17.